welcome viewers to our continuing discussion on international relations theory. In the last few lectures, we have been discussing the realist and the liberal approaches or schools of IR. Today, in the two lectures, these will be the final one on liberal realist debate. We have seen that realists have a pessimistic view of human nature. They believe that humans are selfish and quarrelsome, and it is reflected in the states and in the relations between and among states, which are basically conflictual. There is anarchy in the international system, and the states have to pursue their national security and state survival at all costs. The acquisition and possession of power are the foremost goals of all states. International politics is basically power politics, and there are no higher authority or world government over and above the states. Even if there are some international institutions, the states are not really bound by them. The core assumptions of realism are that states are not equal, that there is a hierarchy of power. There are some powerful states, some not so powerful states, and in the international arena there is struggle between great powers for security and domination. The national interest is the final arbiter of foreign policy of all states. Treaties, conventions, customs and rules, these are expedient arrangements which states can follow or may not follow. And therefore, there is no progressive change possible in world politics, which is defined by anarchy, by struggle for power, struggle for domination, and the ultimate goal and objective of all states is survival. The core assumptions of a liberal approach are they have a positive view of human nature. They believe that individuals may be self-interested and competitive, but they can also engage in collaboration and in cooperation in order to achieve common goals. So, IR, international relations, can be cooperative. They have basic belief in progress and in human reason. And it is a long tradition going back to 15th century with the rise of Renaissance and Reformation and commercial revolution, greater prosperity, and subsequently in the 18th, 19th century, the rise of mass movements in Europe, the struggle for individual rights, human rights, and then in the 19th century, we had coming of responsible governments, republican and democratic governments. So, liberal view is basically a continuation of that tradition. The basic liberal assumptions, one is there is great potential for human progress, that individuals are rational beings, they can act rationally, and that modernization and scientific revolution have made it possible for humans to achieve greater progress. Greater technology, better technology, efficient production has led to increasing prosperity. The capitalist economy of the 18th, 19th, 20th century has made material welfare and better standards of living possible for humans. There is also the emergence of modern civil society and emphasis on individual rights and individual liberty. And finally, there is the liberal intellectual revolution, rational thought, the age of enlightenment. The modern liberal state is a constitutional entity which is there to guarantee individual liberty, to protect life and property of the individuals. John Locke calls it natural rights. The greatest happiness of the greatest number should be the motto for all states, for all governments. Conflict and war are not inevitable. Humans can achieve peace, can go for mutually beneficial cooperation. So, this positive, overall positive and optimistic view of humans and human society is something which underlies the liberal thought. Happiness and contentment of the individual are the foremost concern of the state. There is freedom from authoritarian government. The constitutional states, they respect each other, and the rational interest of constitutional states make them adhere to international law. And what Immanuel Kant calls, there is a possibility of perpetual peace if more and more states become republican or democratic. There is a possibility and prospect for peaceful existence, coexistence among these republican states. There are mainly four liberal schools of thought. First are the sociological liberals, who believe in transnational ties between societies and individuals and groups. So, they emphasize not the states, but the individuals and groups, which can have ties going beyond, transcending the state borders. Another school of liberal thought is interdependence liberals, who talk about economic ties, who emphasize mutual economic cooperation and prosperity, which underlies relations among states and also between individuals. Then there are institutional liberals, who believe that organized cooperation between states are possible through various international institutions. These can be global or regional institutions. We know League of Nations or United Nations or many other international institutions. They can be helpful in promoting peace among states and in establishing a liberal international order. Finally, there are Republican liberals, like what we saw in the Kantian scheme of perpetual peace, which basically emphasizes that Republican or democratic governments, they do not fight each other, they promote peace and cooperation with each other. There is possibility of a zone of peace based on common moral foundations, what Kant calls pacific union, where liberty and various types of freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom of association, these all are important, and there are peaceful ways of resolving conflicts. And there is, this approach is morally superior to the one which believes in global conflict or which believes in international anarchy. They also emphasize, these liberals emphasize economic interdependence. They believe that peace between democracies is strengthened through economic cooperation as trade, investment, and other types of economic ties and cooperation among states increases. There is a spirit of commerce, which is mutual and reciprocal gain for the states involved, and this basically leads to international economic cooperation and exchange, again something which was emphasized by Immanuel Kant. The limitations of liberal theory is that when they talk about democratic peace, when they say that the possibility of international cooperation increases as more and more states become liberal or democratic, then they forget that democracies take time to evolve, to build, to create. A democratic political culture cannot be imposed from above. It grows or evolves from within. And then there is always, in this march towards democracy and republicanism, it's quite possible that there will be setbacks. Some countries which will experiment with democracy, which will be democratic for some time, can subsequently become non-democratic, and we have so many examples. Russia is one example, but there are examples in Asia and Africa where many of the post-colonial, newly independent states, which initially established democratic political order, but subsequently they reverted back to non-democratic or authoritarian governments. So, this is one serious question mark or limitation on liberal theory, on liberal IR. Then the track record of many of the liberal countries, for example, the US during the Cold War, many of the democratically elected governments, for example, in Chile in 1973, the elected government of Allende was overthrown by a coup which was supported by CIA of the US. Similarly, in many other parts of the world, the US was really not supportive of democracy, and it had very good relations with non-democracies, including many monarchical regimes, for example, in the Persian Gulf or in the Arab countries. Many non-democratic monarchies were US allies, and US was not hesitant to support them. Then there is many of the European countries which were internally democratic, but externally they followed a policy of colonization, and in the colonies they did not respect individual rights of the colonized people. So, the track record of these so-called democratic countries puts a huge question mark on some of the liberal assumptions and postulates. Similarly, many of the post-communist countries which emerged in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, during 1990s, late 1980s and early 1990s, they have an uneven record. Many of them, as I said, reverted back to non-democratic authoritarian regimes. This is something which again is considered a limitation of the liberal approach. There is democratic backsliding. The global Pacific Union of new and old democracies is not something which can be taken for granted. Some countries, especially in Western Europe and North America, have been long-standing consolidated democracies, but many other countries which experimented with democracy, but subsequently they witnessed democratic backsliding. Moreover, most of the new democracies in Asia or Eastern Europe, they don't meet conditions of democratic peace. They have some form of elected government, but the more substantive aspects of liberal democracy are absent in these societies. So, they cannot be considered as genuine democracies or genuine liberal democracies. In this sense, Fukuyama's prediction about the end of history and the universalization of Western liberal democracy as the final form of human government has really not proved correct. He predicted this at the end of 1980s and early 1990s, but it has not really proved very correct. In a sense, one can say that there is a complex relationship between democracy and peace. Many of the liberal democracies have resorted to war, or in the past were can be accused of colonizing large parts of Asia and Africa. And in more recent times, the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, unleashed by United States and its allies, its NATO allies, these cannot be called as democratic wars, although they were claimed to be democratic war, but they cannot be really considered democratic wars. So, the whole concept or conception of democratic peace and democratic war is open to question. Critics also point out that the connection between liberal democracy and peace is not very clear. There is a larger debate and between realism and liberalism, and the core questions are there which confront the liberal IR and liberal theory. Can liberal world escape anarchy? The experience over the last many decades and even centuries shows that while relative peace was possible, was established, especially in the aftermath of the Second World War, but it did not lead to what Kant calls perpetual peace. And anarchy and disorder and war could not be totally erased or eradicated. Another question is, will liberal world with more democracies and higher level of economic interdependence and more international institutions, can it really end anarchy and war? So, there is no guarantee that a liberal world order will finally achieve international peace, will finally end all anarchy and war. So, these are some of the very fundamental and larger questions which confront IR theory and especially liberal international thought. The neo-realists have come out with their critique of neo-realism or generally of liberalism. The liberalism-realism debate in fact continues. It has been there long-standing for more than a century. The fundamental issue, of course, has been the very different conceptions of human nature which the realists and the liberals have. The realists believing that humans are basically selfish and quarrelsome, whereas the liberals believe that humans are capable of peace, can be good, although they are competitive, but they can also come together to cooperate with each other to achieve common goods and common ends. In fact, one of the foremost neo-realist thinkers, Kenneth Walt, says, you have misunderstood politics because you have misestimated human nature. So, he says about liberals that their understanding of human nature is faulty, and therefore, their understanding of relations among and between states is also not grounded on sound footing. One can in fact argue that human nature is highly complex. While it is selfish, while there are elements of competition and even quarrel, but sometimes the humans can also overcome their selfishness and can come together. So, basically human nature is complex. Coming back to neorealist critique of liberalism, John Mearsheimer, he says that peace in Europe during the Cold War, that is after the end of Second World War in 1945, and subsequently for the next nearly half century, the Cold War period, he says that Europe was largely peaceful during this time, but it was peaceful not because of the liberal assumptions about human nature or about relations among states. It was peaceful because there was balance of power, because there were two great powers or superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union, and they were leading two blocs, and there was balance of power between these blocs. Both the superpowers and some other countries had nuclear weapons, so in a way there was balance of terror between these two power blocs, and therefore international peace could be ensured. So, mutually assured destruction or the MAD doctrine ensured international peace rather than what internationalists like liberals claim. Similarly, Mearsheimer goes on to say that when the world was bipolar, or when for a short duration it was unipolar during 1990s, the prospect of international peace was greater than now when the world is increasingly becoming multipolar, because multipolarity leads to polycentric world, many centers of power. It leads to instability and insecurity. The root cause is, of course, the anarchic structure of the international system. There is little trust among states. Self-help is the motto. All states must finally go for their own survival and security. They have to ensure their survival and security. They cannot depend on any international institutions or international law. In fact, the realist view of history basically maintains that states remain states despite all historical changes that might have taken place in the last 2,000–3,000 years, but there has been an unchanging anarchical international system, and anarchy leads to self-help among the states. That defense against potential enemies is the foremost objective of all states, and finally that one state's security is another state's insecurity, and this leads to arms race and to war. Critique of liberal view of history, the realist critique, is also positioned on belief that progress is not possible, that history is the same damn things over and over again, that economic interdependence is not new. It was there earlier, that certain international institutions have also been there for some time, but that did not prevent conflict or war. The persistence of anarchy and insecurity is something which which underlies international relations. Today's friend can be tomorrow's enemy. Then they critiqued the Republican internationalism or Republican liberalism, and with the argument that democratic backsliding is something which has happened so many times. It is not possible even for liberal democracies to transcend war and anarchy. So, this is something which underlies the neo-realist thought. Of course, there is what liberals call the complex interdependence, which believes that states are definitely central to international system. International system is anarchical. The power of the states is significant. The strong states prevail over weak states, but despite all this, international institutions can to some extent facilitate cooperation among states, and this is called weak liberalism. There is a possibility of cooperation under anarchy. There is of course, the distinction between liberalism and realism gets narrowed down. Neoliberalism and realism are not very different from each other. The close familiarity between institutional theory and neo-realism can be seen. As against this, there is the strong liberal argument which believes that qualitative change has taken place. Today's economic interdependence ties countries much closer together, that production and consumption take place in a worldwide marketplace, and this promotes interdependence and cooperation, and countries can opt out of this cooperation, but these type of ties ensure that liberalism will not totally go away from international relations and in defining the relations among and between states. These are some of the important readings. Thank you very much.